right? So I would go see my friends who were growers, and at one point, one of them pulls me aside and says, Ali, I feel bad that I'm taking so much money from you every month. I think you should learn how to grow your own crop, and the amount of money you give me, invest it towards, your electricity bill, throw up a couple lights in a closet somewhere and learn how to grow cannabis. That's essentially how it started. Now, there's a whole lot more detail to it, but I was talked into it and sort of became self-taught, and that was back in 2003.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How about you, Amshad?
I started smoking marijuana at an older age, and I fell in love with it, and it kind of changed my personality. I was kind of a little bit more, getting into a lot of like stupid stuff like fights and whatever, and I was angry, and I just took that anger away. So, I really got into cannabis, and I fell in love with it, and I was just delved myself into it, and finally I decided one day just to move out to California and get into it, which wasn't easy at the time because in 2007, nobody was gonna, you would talk to people about marijuana, they pretend they don't want to talk to anybody because the DA was raiding everybody. It was half the people thought I was trying to rob them, the other half. So it was like everybody was so scared at that time that it took me a couple of years just to break in, and I broke into the by opening a dispensary in 2009, buying into one.
Oh, wow.
And that's how I got into cannabis. That's how I met Ali, the grower.
Yeah.
Because I was already he had the best product on the market at the time in Southern California because all the good pot never made it down here. So it was really hard to get good pot down here.
Yeah.
And he had the best, and so I was like, shit, I gotta get to know this guy. And finally, when I bought a dispensary, I met him, and I was like, all right, man, we got to do business. And that was in 2009.
As I was saying earlier, there's such a strong cannabis culture in Northern California, like from the Bay Area all the way up through the Emerald Triangle. So what would happen is the highest grade cannabis would get consumed up there, and at that time it wasn't flowing down into Southern California. A few growers from Northern California figured if that they would take the risk to deliver it down here, they could actually get more per pound. And so there started to, gradually more growers started to explore the Southern California marketplace. And so, I came down here, and that's how we met.
And, when I first came to LA, I was really shocked because what had happened is I'm from the DC area, but on the outskirts. And I had basically been looking for a good pot over there, and I couldn't find anything. One day, I get something from a guy who's from Berkeley. He had moved to West Virginia and just would bring a few pounds every month. And I was like, I got to get that pot. So what I thought is like, oh, this guy's from California. When I come out here, it's all going to be like that. And, I
Little did you know.
I came the first day here. I went and got my rack. I went to the dispensary, started smoking. I'm like, this is not that good. It really wasn't. And that's when I started hunting, because I'm like what they call a connoisseur. I don't need to have the strongest high. I just have to have the best quality high. And so I went to the most expensive dispensary, and at that time, I'd bought some eighths at $120. Believe it or not, it was it was called Zeta, I believe. And then I bought this one Blue Dream at $70 and the Strawberry Cough at $80. And by far my favorite was the Blue Dream and the Strawberry Cough. And it turns out that was Ali and his protege. I didn't,
wow.
So I started so I bought into the dispensary that carried their product, and by far when we first met up, I said let's start doing things like why don't we do testers, and he started testing these strains, and this is mind you 2009, Weed Maps had just started, and we would put stuff out, and then people would come from an hour and a half away and said, yeah, I heard on Weed Maps this stuff is the bomb, and we just couldn't keep enough. But then circumstances, because at that time it was a very turbulent time for everybody. He was going out of his house. The landlord wanted to check the house, or you would, it just things weren't consistent enough to actually build what we're building right now with Source. Now the atmosphere is ripe for us to actually do. That's what we've done the last year. We did 80 different testers, and we're bringing to market the best of the best of the best that we've grown. So there's a lot of product that we sold on the bulk market because we didn't want to put it in Source. So we're literally concentrating on the best 20 strains out of those 80, and plus whatever we had before. So even out of the 80, only maybe 13 or 14 made it.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And those are all strains that you guys made yourself, or did you guys pheno hunt for those?
We pheno hunted for those. Yeah.
We just basically,
some were inherited as clones or what they call garden rescues. Yeah. So when a grower is shutting down their facility due to, a raid or a disease, or they're just going out of business, they contact other growers they know and say, hey, I've got these amazing genetics. could you take them? You know,
to kind of bank it. So if they ever
Oh,
get them
wow.
again, you know.
right?
Yeah.
So there was a group of 5 different groups that all banked different strains, and some of them we almost lost, like strawberry cough, but we were able to actually keep.
Yeah, we grow the original cut of strawberry cough that Kyle Cushman actually is famous for, you know, keeping alive.
Yeah.
How many ever decades ago? You know, it's what they call an elite strain. It means that strain is only available by cutting. It can never be reproduced again. Even if you get the original mother and father genetics of that strain and cross them, you'll never have another strawberry cough. Not that one. You know, not the one Kyle Cushman strawberry cough. And it's an amazing strain. It's a perennial favorite of mine. I've been growing it for a long time, since my NorCal days, and I always go back to it. And people seem to love it. It's popular.
Yeah, it was my favorite sativa by far.
So
It's very
that's
creative high.
Yeah.
That's an example of a garden rescue, you know. So a grower's shutting down for whatever reason, they give you all their genetics. So we pheno hunt, you know, we have garden rescue strains. I've purchased a couple strains from other growers as well, just, you know, tracked it down and, hey, can I buy a few clones from you? So that's how they come to us.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did you guys kind of get together and decide that you're going to make Source Cannabis? How did that venture start?
Well, and my history is when I was younger, I used to consult for Fortune 500 companies on sourcing products from overseas and then helping them do the packaging and I had already had my own company at a young 19, and we were selling to all the big national chains, and I sold it at 22. I owned 30% of the company, and I was mentored by these guys that knew how to like brand. They had different like products that they would brand and sell to anywhere from like Nordstrom to Walmart. So they were really savvy. And I ended up consulting for people and learning a lot of tricks along the way. When we met up in 2009, he wasn't really ready to do massive growing at that time. There was like this comment that everybody says, like, that if I was in charge, we'd all go to prison.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because I just wanted to, I really believed, because morally I didn't have anything against it. I didn't believe that, you know, cannabis in any way hurt anyone. Because for anything, it really calms people down.
And I just felt at the time politically it wasn't the right time to scale. I preferred to stay very small time medical marijuana grower. Yeah.
So along the way, you know, I had to leave the dispensary, unfortunately, and a couple of years later, a couple of his growers got raided by the DEA at the time, the ones that he was consulting for, and so we were both in a kind of situation where we had to restart. So we restarted on the underground market, and just enough to survive. And then we basically parlayed everything to get into the legal market. We made deals with people. We raised a little capital. And then we started the brand, and it was a rough start, but like it's just getting better by the minute, and people are recognizing it because one of the best things about our product is it's very functional high. I mean, you're high, but sometimes what I call it's like you're like in a video game or something. You can still play. You know what I mean?
Yeah, to where you don't get that like sedating couch lock effect.
We have certain strains. If that's what you want, we have that, but. You know, like one of the favorite strains that I smoke now only is something we can't really grow. It's not that we can't grow it; we can grow it, but the problem is it doesn't grow very pretty, and so there's no real market value on the open market because the buyer will look at it and say, that doesn't have a lot of jewelry or whatever, but and it yields poorly, so we would have to sell it so expensive. So we just grow it for ourselves, and we share it with like really close friends and family, and we make sure that they get some, but it's really good high. It's very, very, very anti-anxiety.
What strain is it?
It's Skittles. It's just the way we grow it.
It's the way you guys grow it.
Yeah, it just because every growing style has a different thing depending on different feel on the genetics.
It hasn't been the most popular in terms of like putting it in the brand. And in terms of the testing, it doesn't always do the highest THC numbers. It's like lower 20s, maybe high teens. And in the market currently, the way it is, people tend to, for the recreational flowers, veer towards like higher THC strains.
Yeah.
So the Skittles never really caught on under the Source label, but we love it as cannabis connoisseurs because you know there's a lot more going on. There's cannabinoids and terpenes and flavonoids and et cetera. It's all these phyto chemicals going on in cannabis. Then there's your subjective experience. You smoke it, you inhale it, you ingest it, and you have this experience. And if that experience is a positive, euphoric, mellow, whatever one for you, whatever positive word you can think of, that when you smoke cannabis, then you resonate with that strain. And so we love it. But at this point, it doesn't have maybe mass commercial appeal. And
you got to understand, is like if we bring out a strain that has 9% THC, nobody will buy it.
Yeah.
But the reality is, one of my favorite strains that he have grew was Master Kush, and it was 9% THC.
It's 8 or 9%. Yeah.
Yeah, and I smoked it, and I couldn't speak for 2 hours, and it was amazing. Like, it's like you didn't want to speak. You were just really
The
like,
Terps got to you or what?
I really do believe in the terpenes and the people. That's the problem, is people really think it's THC, and THC is only one factor. And if you really want so much THC, then get just extracts. That's almost pure THC. If you're smoking flower, you're going to get a more emotional high, and the emotion comes from all those different terpenes and the different cannabinoids. So the reality is that for me, someone like me, I don't really care about the THC content. I care more about the terpenes and the cannabinoids. And if you look at our terpenes, they're always in the top 1%. And so like, for example, strawberry cough has a myrcene content of like 1.6%, which is like 8 times the average or 9 times the average. But that terpene gives you a certain effect. And if you smoke strawberry cough, and especially I liked it in the afternoon, you become very conversational with other people. It's really good for working, creating, if you're writing a script, if you're doing something like that, music. And then Quest is on a different level. Quest is like that on turbo. So it's really good for people that want to make music. It's very you listen to music in a different way. It's a little too potent for me at my age right now. I think I've worn out all my receptors. But yeah, it's really, really good for that.
That's awesome. So what is the Quest? Like, what exactly is that crossed with?
We believe it's some kind of Gorilla Glue pheno.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it was, a garden rescue, and that's what it originally was given to us as, right? So we start growing it, and at first it gets rejected. People are telling us, this is not Gorilla Glue number 4, which is the well-known one.
Yeah.
And so we were really, really close to like abandoning that strain, discontinuing it. And at that time, we were medical operators, and some amount of that Quest made it into a secret sesh, and also some pre-rolled joints made it into the hands of the dispensary
like some
staff.
festival or some music thing.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And the feedback was that this strain is amazing, but it's not a Gorilla Glue. You can't call it that. You guys just got to come up with a new name. And so at that time, one of the growers who was in the dispensary with us, he says, "Oh, call it Galaxy Quest." So we tried that. It didn't stick, but Quest did. People dropped the Galaxy
And
part and
it's our
said,
number one
they
seller.
abbreviated just, we want Quest, Quest, and now it's our number 1 seller.
By far.
It's a beautiful strain. It's amazing.
That's awesome.
No store will place an order if it's not on the, like, it has to be on the menu.
Really?
Now, we have other
We have-
fantastic
no, we do.
strains.
But they love it so much, like they include it on every order.
We have other message to all the dispensaries. We have other strains that we believe are equally as
Well, right now, D33 is catching
potent
up.
as Quest, and they're going to be very well received. Yes.
Yeah.
So be open-minded to some
Well,
of
it
our
is. They are
other
actually-
strains coming. I know they are. We just
Yeah.
need to produce more.
D33 is starting. We tested D33. It did very well, and so everybody was like, "Oh, we need more." And so it takes time, of course, to ramp up. So we ramped up production by 300% on D33. It completely sold out. So now we're
wow.
doubling it again and seeing. So it'll be 6-fold of what we originally tried, and it seems to have. It just can't stay. It doesn't stay on the menu.
Our confetti cake has been
Confetti
really
cake is,
popular. We're
yeah.
devoting more real estate to that. I think the animal face is going to be very popular. It's also a very high THC strain. So
The thing is you got to understand is that in the grow business right now, there's people that specialize at doing really good exotics. There's people that specialize in doing good OGs, and there's people that specialize in doing everything. You know what I mean? And what we tried to do is what we did basically is Ali had two, basically the first person he partnered up with, and then another protege. Those 3 people have 40 years combined, and they basically all collaborate together to make sure that all our OGs are incredible, all our exotics.
the other growers he's referring to work with Source Cannabis now.
Yeah, they're
Oh,
So
awesome.
they're facility managers
Yeah.
with our company.
Yeah.
So we're all working together.
So we all
That's
basically,
great.
yeah. So basically, we all work together to. I give them the feedback on what we need, and they do the best they can to make sure that it's grown really well. And I don't think there's, as a team, I haven't seen really out there, and I don't want to discount because there's a lot of badass growers out there, and mad respect and love to everybody, But the thing is like we basically have, we're one of the few companies that has multiple OGs that are A+. We have multiple exotics that are A+. We have multiple, indica, sativas. We do it A+. And that was our goal. Is like we want to make sure that and we've lost a lot of money along the way doing that.
We keep a really high standard for our cannabis flower because we ingest it too.
Yeah.
We're fans of our own flower. We're consumers of our own flower. So we have a really high standard for ourselves, and that's what we want to scale, and that's what we want to make available to the whole world. you know.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm just
Costly.
talking about. Yeah,
It's very costly.
Yeah.
But again, when we were on the underground market and we were growing, we got offered to use phospholode. I don't know if you know what that is. So phospholode is it's a I don't know what you call it, but it's not a nutrient. But you can feed your plants that, and it gives you about 30% more yield.
I forgot
It's
what
like
the
steroids, pretty much.
well,
Something similar.
I forgot what the active ingredient is called. I used to know it, and what it does is it shocks the plant, you know, at like a genetic level to kind of stop growing, bush out, and be really heavy in terms of the bud yields.
Yeah.
But I believe that you also sacrifice quite a bit of quality, and the original genetic expression of that strain is sacrificed.
Yeah,
you know,
and
by
the
treating
biggest-
it with these chemicals, and then those chemicals became actually classified as illegal in the state of California.
Oh,
but a lot of
wow.
growers, when they found out it was going illegal, stocked up on it and continued using it even through the, you know, medical and recreational and whatnot. And we absolutely refuse to have practices like that. In fact, we're Clean Green certified if you want to talk about that later. So,
But
'cause these
even-
all go hand in hand.
On the underground market, I mean, there was really no. If we had used them and they were harmless, we might have used them because nobody really cared at that time of like how incredible the quality was. It might have made a difference of $50, $100 a pound. We ethically and morally were against them because they cause cancer. And so when we sat and thought at the option, we said, well, if we don't smoke it, I said, would you smoke it? No. Would you smoke it? No. Okay. So if we're not willing to smoke it, how can we sell it? And so, you know, we were so morally opposed to it. And, you know, and 99% of the product that was on the shelves of dispensaries had it. And so we just felt like, you know, we just couldn't do it. We just didn't think that the money was worth risking people's lives and you know, and we would be hypocrites.
Our sense of ethics and principles and core values would be, you know, violated.
Compromised,
If,
yeah.
Yeah, of
if
course.
we did.
Especially at the end of the day, cannabis is used as a medicine. And you
Correct.
shouldn't really be putting anything in there that's going to increase cancer if people are using it to fight cancer.
Right, right.
It's
Exactly.
contradicting
Is it?
itself right there.
I mean, you know, it's not necessarily maybe that those ingredients cause cancer per se, but
Yeah.
they can be carcinogenic and you know,
more
they
than
can,
cigarettes.
yeah,
They're more carcinogens than
yeah.
cigarettes.
And so, anyhow, we refuse to use them. We always have, and you know, and there's a lot of great growers out there that have a very high integrity, and
True,
they
yeah.
don't use these things. But there were also a lot of other growers under like commercial financial stress, and they use these things to get bigger yields. But now in the regulated recreational market, of course, we have to follow very strict rules. So if you're buying your cannabis at legal dispensaries that are licensed grown by legal growers, et cetera, you know, you're getting a much cleaner product than what used to be out there
Absolutely.
10 years ago.
That's crazy. Do you want to get in a little bit about your growing methods? And because you mentioned you guys were Clean Green certified. So if you want to get in a little bit about what that is.
Yeah, sure. For scale indoor growing, there aren't so many cultivators using soil, so we do use pure living soil. Of course, we use very high quality filtered water. Almost all organic nutrients, they're all OMRI listed, and that's OMRI, Organic Materials Review Institute. So almost everything I use is organic. And of course, I follow all the state guidelines with pesticides, et cetera. Those are all natural, organic where possible, properly applied, following all the protocols that were laid out for us. And then we got something called Clean Green certification. Now, Clean Green was started by an attorney named Chris Van Hook some number of years ago. I've known him for a long, long time. And what he did is he created a program that was parallel to the USDA organic program. As cannabis growers, we were not allowed to use the word organic when we marketed our product. So he created this program whereby our crops are using the same method as organic certified food crops would be. But he came up with a different name, and that was Clean Green. And in addition to that, there's these best practices that you have to follow besides being an organic farmer, like keeping your facility super clean, making sure everybody's trained, in all the different company policies and all the different state regulations. I mean, there's a whole list of things you have to do to be Clean Green certified, and it's just our way of demonstrating we're doing our best to go above and beyond the highest standard. That's our contemporary highest standard. Yeah.
And the thing is that the first, second, and third people that were Clean Green certified,
Indoor.
indoor Clean Green certified in California, are the three people that work for us.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's me and then our two other master growers who,
They're the
who
first
manage our
That's so
facilities.
badass. That
Yeah.
gives you guys like a gold,
Yeah.
just like medal right there.
We were
For
the
real.
first three indoor. Now there had
Yeah.
been outdoor growers
Yeah, of
certified,
course,
but
but like indoors a little bit more hard to get, in my opinion. Just from
And
what
at that
is.
time,
For
I
sure.
had a dispensary and I got it certified as a dispensary. And I went to tell him, and then he was trying to. Same time he was telling me about this guy. So
Oh,
we'd
wow.
both known about Van Hook for around the same time because I was trying to do things differently at that time. But one of the things we would love to explain to the audience is that, like, another thing we do is, again, we sacrifice money by the last the flowering life cycle of cannabis is about 8.5 weeks. The last 3 weeks, most not again. There's some. I don't want to disrespect anyone, but the standards are to keep feeding it nutrients and maybe do a 1 week flush. By flush, I mean is you just give it water. So you're giving the plant only water to take out all the
no fertilizer,
no
pure
fertilizer,
water.
just to get the salts and sugars out, so that when you smoke it, if you ever smoke a joint and you get a salty feeling,
Yeah.
that means there's salts in there that haven't been washed out, and it's not good. So the thing is, what we do is,
Or when you go to ash the joint
It's black.
and the cherry is still a darker color and maybe
Yeah.
the whole thing falls out as like one
Yeah.
cube, as opposed to like fine gray ash.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are all.
so we do it for 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So the last week of flushing, the water is like clear.
Yeah.
The first week it's brown. The second week it's lighter brown. By the third week, it's completely transparent, and that lets you know that the soil is clean and the roots are clean, and whatever the plant is taking that last week is clean.
There is something called ppm, parts per million. So the idea with flushing is to get that parts per million as low as possible and to get it to match what your pure water with whatever dissolved, solids or particles may be in there, to get that ppm to match that pure water. And so those plant roots are just getting, flushed. All the molecules of salts and sugars that build up around them are just getting stripped away. And you're getting that pure cannabis taste, aroma, and flavor of that strain, not of the nutrients that go in there. There are different kinds of nutrients, especially sugars, that can be used to manipulate the taste of cannabis to make it taste like something else. I've experimented with it within the past, but I'm a purist. I always come back to, I want to taste that strain, and I want the optimal genetic expression of that strain. I don't want to manipulate it. I don't want to mess with nature. Nature has much greater intelligence than, any little nutrient or, chemistry or technology I could use.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I want to empower nature to express itself. And that's
And then we try to go beyond also in post production. So once it's chopped, we basically make sure that it dries properly, and then when it gets trimmed and put into jars. And the reason we put it into jars is because
all glass jars.
all glass jars. And the reason, and that's logistically, that's very difficult.
If
Yeah.
you can imagine having a bigger
Hundreds of
grow
jars.
and curing all hundreds of pounds in glass jars,
Yeah.
it's,
But the reality
It's
is
a full-time
when
job.
product is cured in jars, there's two things that really help. The first thing I like is that when you put it in a plastic bag, what happens is that all the buds are kind of tightly, I don't want to say crushed, but they're really put, and the THC glands start to burst.
and there's that electrostatic pressure
Yeah, from
that builds up through the
From the
plastic bag.
plastic.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And so
That
by
zaps
putting it
all
in
the
glass,
cannabinoids and
Yeah.
terpenes off of
Yeah.
the flower. Yeah.
it lets the plant cure the buds in their natural shape, and they get very tight that way. And when you put it in jars and you let the air not circulate in there, and then you open it 2 hours a day and for the first 7-8 days until it's purely cured. When you smoke the joint, not only will it give you a much smoother. Now, there's two types of coughs. One's good, one's bad. The bad cough is when you put it in your throat and your throat hurts and all that. That's a bad
Yeah.
cough. If you smoke it and it goes into your lungs, and then a few seconds later you're coughing, that's a good clean cough. Doesn't do much damage. And you should look at the ash, and if the ash should be like a gray. If the ash is black, that's again not a very, it hasn't been flushed properly or cured properly. There's still some remnants of water in there.
So when it comes to curing, what would you say is like the best way to preserve the terpenes besides by putting it in the jars?
Everybody's different. His style is pretty cool. Which, like, we get our eighths in jars. He keeps them in the fridge, which makes them last.
I keep everything in really cool temperatures. I'm giving away one of my secrets here. So the drying room, the room where all the cannabis flower is being trimmed, the room where it's being cured, and then in the distribution, the room where it's all being packed. We keep them all relatively cold, so that helps preserve those oil membranes those glands onto the flower. And then, of course, like Amjad was saying, we use glass to cure everything, so we try to minimize contact with plastic.
Our delivery vans we make sure to keep the AC really cold in there. Our distribution room is cold. Is that better? Thank you. You know, from the distribution room to everything, we try to keep it really cold and keep it. But like if you're trying to keep it long term, you know, like for me, I don't care. I actually love it when they get like really old and dry. That's the way I like it.
Yeah.
You know, I like to just be able to like have it just with my hands just crush and
Just
roll
have
a
it
joint.
crush up.
Yeah, I mean, but the stuff he has in the fridge is good too.
You
so.
also want minimal, like, what do you call it? Disturbance, knocking the buds around.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of training and retraining for post-production cultivation, and then as they hand it off to distribution, to not like, you know, pour jars out aggressively, you know, shuffle buds around with your fingers everywhere. You want to be a little bit more gentle with it.
Yeah.
We want to try to preserve, again, all
We
those.
spend a lot of money. I mean, our costs. That's when I say we don't make as much money. We make less money because our labor is it's labor intensive on all aspects. From the fact that it's soil has to be mixed. It's not just a cube you can put in there. The soil's heavy. Everything has to be hand watered with the right timing to get all the roots, the water that needs. To be gently chopped, you know, when they chop the plants, to be gentle all the way, for our trimmers to do it gently, which costs more per hour, takes more hours.
Yep.
To the distro being everything along the way has to be gently done. That's why we haven't really, you know, had outsiders. We could outsource it, that part of it, and save a lot of money, but we choose not to, because when we deliver the product to the end user and we say this is the best we can do, this is the best we can do.
You know, and all along the way, all the different folks that touch the flower on its way into being packed into source, there are incentives in the forms of quarterly bonuses or biweekly bonuses or whatever to ensure that they're following the best practices. So, you know, you're incentivized to slow down a little bit, be patient, and take care of the product. Our goal is for every eighth jar to be delivered, you know, looking like something we would be proud to buy and smoke ourselves. That's the goal. It's hard to do, you know. The more you scale, the harder it is to do. But that's constantly one of our
We've also
missions.
noticed as when the flower is really, really nice, the people that work there have a sense of pride, and they almost like
They enjoy going to work. Yeah, and working with
they
awesome.
enjoy working with it and
with
saying,
the flowers.
So when they trim it, they're like you can tell, like when we have a bad crop, which happens, it's a farm, you know. Let's be real. But when it's really nice, they you know, their attitude is just that you can just tell. Their comments, you know, it's really cool.
I used to be a trimmer, so like I know exactly that feeling when you get like a super nice, like my favorite strain to trim was a Gorilla Glue or Blue Dream, just because of like the
Jewelry,
big, just the
nugs,
big nugs, big trikes,
Easiest to trim.
easiest to trim. So it's like I totally understand what you guys mean by
And
that.
we've lucky. We have really good, you know, people that
Yeah.
surround us. We're very blessed in that sense. Is like we couldn't do it without all those people. And along the way, you know, we've picked up some people on our team that are just like, I mean, I can't imagine, you know, doing this without them. It just wouldn't be fun, you know.
Yeah,
So
that's so awesome. You guys are like a little family.
we're a tribe, yeah.
I love that. Like that's kind of hard to find right now in the cannabis industry. You know, like you guys are kind of bringing the compassion back, and it really shows.
Man, it's hard for cannabis operators. We're all under so much pressure. You know, I liken it to like you put me in a boxing match, tie my wrist behind my back, and put a blindfold on me, and then you're telling me to box this guy. Like the amount of regulations and taxes and pressure and everything we have to go through, it's tough for cannabis operators, for all of us, you know. And so you can't blame some folks for sometimes sacrificing certain company culture in order to just try to eat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough business. It's not all glamour.
We never
if
imagined
that's-
it would be this tough. To be
Yeah.
honest with you, like sometimes I, you know, like just coming to the legal market, and you know, we know people that never came to the legal market, and their life is a lot easier in a lot of ways. The good thing about being in the legal market is like, you know, you're doing everything by the book, so you kind of sleep better at night. But then other problems arise that wake you up too. So it's like, you know, it's yin yang. There's no real right, you know.
Every week, at least once a week, I joke at work about like there's 1,000 things I got to do that I don't love in order to do the one thing that I love.
Yeah.
You know, like so
And I thought we'd have 7 different lawyers.
building a corporate structure, you know, all the legal, the policy, the regs, everything.
We got technical issues.
Technical difficulties.
There we
Sorry
go,
about that,
you're
guys. My mic was off. I'm like, why can't I hear myself? Do you guys want to get in a little bit about your transition into Prop 64 from 215?
Yeah, we were basically, it just started like, we were trying to make a living just doing underground growing. And do you want to smoke our joint?
Yeah, I'll smoke your joint.
Yeah, why are you going to smoke that when we got? Now, this is 20% strawberry cough, 80% Skittles.
Ooh, I'm excited.
So I'm going to let you,
It's a great mix.
let me start it. And
there you
then,
go.
That's my own personal mix. Like that's
Yeah.
what I smoke at home.
This is a
Really?
hand roll joint, yes.
I'm an OG lover, and my
Yeah.
specialty in growing is OGs. Like I've always been smoking OGs. I love Kushes, but lately the Skittles and the smoothie and the Skittles crosses have kind of.
Oh my God, it smells so
Because
terpy.
it's amazing,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's terpy as fuck.
I don't think I've smoked strawberry cough since like the Prop 215 days, to be honest. Just
We
it's
should.
hard.
We don't know. We don't have any right now.
It's
but
We do.
hard to
We'll
find
send you-
a good
well,
one.
We should send her. We should send you some.
We're
yeah.
gonna be jarring some. We just got it tested, so we should be jarring some next week. I'll make sure that you get some.
Yay! I'm excited. I'll do a terpene breakdown on that. So stay tuned.
The thing is that stuff sells out so fast, but
that it's hard to keep it for yourselves.
well, we were only growing. What happened was that I wanted some, so I said just grow some so I can test some, and then whatever I don't use we'll sell. Problem is when we put it on the market, and it's a very low yielder, so it's in our top price bracket.
yeah.
It's a very low yielder. It doesn't make us any money. Really, it's a terrible yielder. And it's very difficult to grow. It doesn't grow up. It grows sideways.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to
It's
make
hard
it
to
yield. It's hard
Really?
to.
Yeah, but with the
yeah.
guy that manages it, the guy that handles it, that's all he grew. So he's a strawberry cough specialist. That's remember I told so we got lucky, and we sent it out to the stores, and then all of a sudden, like, not even an hour, it was all sold out. And so then the next round was like 10 or 15 pounds, and it sold out in less than an hour. We're like, Jesus, what's going on, man? So we had to put limits on how much people could buy of it. So now,
wow.
so now we put 30 pounds, and that sold out in like 2-3 days. So now we got another like 20 some pounds. We'll see how long that takes, but
That's awesome. You can already smell.
if you notice, I don't inhale the butane through the joint, and I would recommend everybody out there, if you're smoking a joint, you try to use a torch if you can. If you're going to use a Bic lighter, which is what I use sometimes also, just light it from the outside. Don't inhale while you're lighting it, because you'll get butane through the through your weed.
Get the tip burning, and
Yeah.
then take your first hit,
Yeah.
and that should get the joint started.
Yeah, don't inhale butane through that, because you're ruining your cannabis. FYI.
That'll get the tower started.
That's awesome.
The new word for joint is tower, by the way.
Yeah, our new.
As it should be.
As it should be.
Because they look like towers, and you guys make towers.
Here we go. If I'm on camera, there we go.
Look
Tower.
at Ollie wearing both source and
Advertising.
tower.
Hey,
That's a whole mood.
I'm not just a founder and an owner. I'm a fan.
You got to be a fan of your own product, for real.
Yeah.
If you can't smoke it, then why are you putting it on the shelves? That's kind of one thing that I stand by.
You want to tell her about our start in the recreational, the transition from medical operators to.
Yeah, so him and I partnered up 50-50, and the thing is that I didn't know how to grow.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like a white belt, and he's a black belt. So we basically, and I had fallen financially, so I was hungry and humble, and so he was the same, and so basically we, I said, look, you're giving me 50% of this whole endeavor we're doing. I don't know how to grow. I don't think that's fair. Give me 25%. He's like, no, man, I did business with you when you had a dispensary. I like the way you do business, and one day, you're going to basically handle the business side, which is going to, that's what I'm investing in. I know who you are. And I'm like, all right, fine. So I said, so we'd be driving down to the grows, smoking weed, which don't do that, guys. But we were.
Don't smoke and drive.
Don't smoke and drive, but, I don't
Unless
know.
your windows are tinted.
Unless you have a charcoal filter hooked up to a fan inside your car.
So, but we would be joking, laughing. And then once we get there, I would literally just not say anything and just follow his lead. And I got decent at it. So I learned a lot of things, along the way. I learned how to clone. I learned how, I know people say learn how to water, but you do have to learn how to water because
Oh, you do.
Because if people think, what is just watering? No, they're overwatering, you ruin the plants. Underwatering, you ruin the plants. So perfectly watering is an art, and believe it or not, it's actually in our company you get promoted to doing that. It's not like something you get a job. You can't get a job watering. You get promoted to it.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because
Wow.
yeah, exactly. So I learned that. I learned all the different tricks and trades, but what I didn't know how to do is what he's really good at. Is he has this like synergy with the plants where he knows if it's sick. You know, he can like he's like the whisperer of these plants. I don't understand it because he can walk into a room and I see everything's fine, and he sees one plant that's like diseased. And so he, you know, he's like a scientist, you know, and I'm like, you know, and I basically, you know, we just expanded and did partnerships with people and help, you know, like consult people to make money to survive. But we were broke, and he comes one day, he'd just done a mushroom trip over the weekend. And he's like, you know what, man, we need to get a license, a dispensary license so we can grow. And I'm like, dude, they're going for like 1.6 million, man. We don't even have like $1,600, let alone, you know, what are you talking about, man? We're eating at the taco truck for my birthday, you know, to celebrate.
Yeah.
So anyway, so he's like, dude, don't think about that. Just, you know, you're pretty good at like manifesting shit. Just let the universe do it. And one of the things, I would go to meetings that I knew that there was no real opportunity, but I would just go just to kind of let the universe know that I'm looking for a license. And then a couple years later, we ended up getting 2 licenses, you know, and 2 different grow facilities. And
Can I get
you
the
know,
ashtray? Sorry,
yeah,
guys.
absolutely.
Thank you.
You're
Yeah. And you know, and it was just making deals with certain people, being, you know, very persistent, and then making sure that everybody was basically working together to make sure that we didn't fall along the way, because it was a Hail Mary. It was a very big risk, you know, no money and expanding, no money, and you know, and it was just really, really risky. But we did it, you know, and we were able to survive.
That's awesome that you guys are one of the brands that like made it through the transition to 64.
Yeah.
Now we
know,
went through, you know, a couple iterations of the brand before
Yeah.
arriving at Source, but yeah, we were medical operators with a couple dispensaries and a couple grows here in LA, all operating under the former Prop D, Prop M, whatever, you know, it was called before we became recreational. And so yeah, we were then rolled over into the recreational market. And it was a very tough start for us. There were multiple moments of what seemed like was going to be collapse, you know, of everything we were doing. It was just, like I said earlier, it was so regulated, you know.
And we're not one of the brands that got like $20 million in funding or $30 million in funding, so we weren't
yeah,
able to.
we were homegrown.
You know, we were
no
basically,
pun intended.
yeah, we weren't able to maneuver and make
Yeah.
mistakes. You didn't, you know, if you didn't land on the right, you know, in the right place, you fell, you know, and so. And it made us actually stronger in the end, because now everybody knows that we're all on the same team and we're all trying to just get to this place together, which is really cool because, you know, I mean, having money is great. Don't get me wrong, you know, but having like that kind of that tribe mentality that we're all working together to get one place is the culture is
Community.
pretty cool. Yeah.
We're a community, you know. We're mission driven. You know, we have a purpose here, and here, back to you.
But
Yep.
I'm
but
good
yeah,
on
it
that.
was-
I'm gonna burn my nails.
Oh, okay. I'll finish it later.
I'm
But,
like, I can't hit that.
yeah, it was
good.
a really tough transition, and I know it was for a lot of cannabis operators. We know many people in this industry, and we talk to a lot of people, and it was tough for a lot of us. So I'm very proud of the folks who've been able to endure it and have the resilience to make it this far.
Yeah, you got to understand is that so people know, like back in the day when I came in 2007, you know, you had to be crazy to get in this business, and believe me, there was a lot of crazy people, including myself. I think, you know, when I look back at it, yeah, that was crazy, you know, and but I'd already taken a lot of risks, you know, in my life, and I said, you know what, I'm just gonna go for it, and you know, I can speak up just for myself that it was not only was it risky because you can get robbed, which I did, you know, you know, things like that. But it's also risky because at that time, state, like local police, whatever, could arrest you, and you could do several years in state pen, which nobody wants to do, you know. So the kind of people that at that time this business drew out were people that were you know, risk takers, and not necessarily the best businessmen, not necessarily the best growers, it didn't always happen like that. It was people that were willing to take a risk, or you could say a calculated risk, because, you know, there was some protection, but it was very, 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 you know, hit or miss. I mean, anybody, the local police could arrest you, the DA could get you, you know, I mean, and And what I did, besides the dispensary, if you're doing like moving marijuana or growing, whatever, there was really no protection for that.
Just before the show, we were having a conversation here about how, when I first got into growing cannabis, your hands would be shaking when you went to the hydroponic store to open the door. There'd be police helicopters circling above, undercover units across the street following people home and then popping them. And it was a crazy time, especially the bigger the vehicle, the quicker you'd get followed. Now, you were also exposed to thieves. So it was a crazy time back then, in cannabis. Yeah,
it's like the Wild West.
It was.
It was the Wild West, yeah.
Yeah.
Like everybody would tell me, what do you do? And I'm like, real estate. And then I accidentally one time talked to a guy who knew too much about real estate.
No.
And so he asked me questions about this, that, and I was like, oh, shit.
You're like, what did I get myself
exactly,
into?
yeah, exactly. So, but I couldn't tell anybody, I couldn't tell anybody what I was doing. So.
And now look at you. You're on a podcast talking about what you do.
A surreal moment came one time when we were consulting for this big grow, and they had motion sensors that got activated. So what happens is if you have one motion sensor that gets activated, you don't worry because it could be something that moved. But what was worrisome that night at like midnight or 1 a.m. was that 7 different ones got activated. So what everybody thought was there's burglars in there going from room to room stealing stuff. We called the police.
It looked like multiple people had broken into the grow and were running around the facility because of the way the alarm sensors were triggered. Yeah.
So the police come, and we were there, and there was a helicopter. At one point, 2 helicopters. They all and him and I are
6 German Shepherds.
Yeah, it was
full
like
SWAT gear.
I'm telling you, it's downtown, and we were like, wait, this is fucking surreal because
they were there to protect us.
Back in the day,
they were there to help us.
And they came and shook our hands and said,
it was surreal.
"That's the most beautiful grow we've seen." And we're like, I'm like, first of all, I think like I'm being pranked or something. This is, there's no way.
Here's the really funny part of that story. The alarm sensors were triggered in such rapid succession because a pigeon had gotten into the grow. There was a small hole somewhere where it had worked its way through, and it was flying around at night, and it looked like a whole bunch of people, like a gang of people had broken in and were running around. That's the funny part of the story. The surreal part of the story, as Amjad said, is like, shaking hands with the police and them saying, "Hey, we're here to protect your business like any other business."
That's a really nice grow.
It was awesome. It was that moment, makes the journey worth it. All the challenges, and all the hurdles we've had to overcome to become legal operators, and then to have that kind of moment. Our grow here in downtown LA, I've personally given a tour to 6 or 7 LA City detectives, and that was another surreal moment. Taking them through my grow room by room and explaining what we do and how everything works. And then they gave me their business cards and said, "Hey, if you ever need my help, just call me up."
Yeah, or the council member,
city council member.
Yeah, it was really cool. On 2 different ones for 2 different locations.
It's nice to finally be accepted. Yeah.
That's so crazy. That's awesome.
Yeah,
that would be kind of awkward walking through the grow with the cops, and then at the end they shake your hand. They're like, "That was so beautiful."
And of course, I don't even tell you about I'm Middle Eastern, so my family, when they found out, they're like, "Oh, you're gonna go to prison?" All these things. I mean, and now they're like, "How did you know?"
Yeah.
And so it's that dealing with that pressure too of like, having your friends worried about you and giving you advice like, "Dude, don't do this, don't do this." And I think one of his buddies also same thing was like, not all his buddies, but mine especially were like, "Nah, dude, you're crazy to get into this. You're gonna go to jail." And so that put a lot of pressure because you're like, "Damn, man, I really need support right now. I don't need."
Instead of like all the negativity.
Yeah, but they were just worried,
Yeah, it was a scary time getting into the industry in the Prop 215 days. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that that's over. Do you guys have any like new plans for Source this coming year? Maybe some new products, new strains?
Well, some of the things that we've done to explain to you our products, we really, we don't, our policy is to do things the best that we can. So we are not the kind of company that's going to be all over the place. What I mean by that is like, we're not going to do an edibles line yet. And I say yet, we're not going to do an extract line yet. And the reason is because, to perfect what we're doing took so much time and so much energy that we want to make sure that we are the best that we can be in flower. We just introduced our new packaging, which has a freshness seal, and the cool thing about that freshness seal is that it's reusable. Just put it back and close the lid, it reseals, and that keeps the product fresh longer. That's one thing that we've done. So we're constantly evolving. Our Tower 7-pack has in the bottom of it, it's entombed. It has a Bavita pack. It's a 55% humidity so that it doesn't ever get dry or too moist. And if you look at the 7-pack, It's a very beautiful packaging, but it's also very functional, and it holds the joints in place. It's really cool, and that's what we just basically finished that. Our next goal in the next 2 to 3 years is to introduce a high-end hash line, and we're going to go with some of the old school styles of doing hash. Everybody's doing water hash. Everybody's doing all this stuff. We want to do what real hash is. And when I say real hash, I shouldn't say real hash because it's evolved, but what traditional hash used to be like from Morocco or the Bekaa Valley in Lebanon, what's known as Lebanese red, Moroccan brown, and they call it 00. It's some of the best sift hash you can get. And so we want to figure out a way to bring that kind of hash, because if you've ever smoked it, it is on a different level. It's really, really good. And it tastes really good. The taste is amazing. And so, we want to do that, and then we want to introduce a nice edibles line. Again, we like to keep things on the higher end product. And
Yeah.
when I mean higher end, it's not like we want the best quality. So that's what we're going towards the future. But right now we're so in demand that our goal is to expand our cultivation.
And we probably will have some new strains before the end of the year as well. Just testing out some strains. Let's see how it goes. Yeah.
That's awesome. Do you guys have anything to share before we wrap up? Or
No, I just want you to see if you can say my name right.
That's so rude.
No, it's funny. I thought it's funny. It's a
No,
difficult thing to say.
I'm Middle Eastern too. My family's from Israel. So
Oh, really?
like, yeah.
Then we're cousins.
That's what I'm saying. So it's like I always butcher those Middle Eastern
It's okay.
names. Like I
I
have all my cousins. Like I'm
It's
just like,
okay.
I
I know
can't
you
even
know,
say
but to me, it's just funny. That's so. Actually, if you know, my name is Amjad, and for years I would go by John, and the reason is because I was in the restaurant business, and so every time I would say Amjad, they think I'm saying I'm John. So, and it took so much time to figure it out, or to try to explain to them my real name, and they would butcher it. So I went by John for a long time, but now I'm going by Amjad, and it's okay. I always forgive people that mess up my name as long as they're cool.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that I'm cool.
You're super cool.
Super cool. And thank you guys for having us on here.
Yeah,
Thank you for all the listeners for tuning in. And, thank you to the world for increasingly accepting cannabis. This is great.
How much time?
Oh, we got 7. That's a long
You
time.
came in. I
Hey,
didn't know.
we just
We just said goodbye.
we just said goodbye. Thank you to the world. We're out of here.
We're not out of here. We have another 5 minutes, guys.
You're stuck with us.
It's all good. Do you guys want to share any like crazy cannabis stories from maybe the Prop 215 era?
I can share with you a crazy
I
story
got
on
a
the East Coast.
long list.
I know, that's why I'm like, let's get into those. Those are always fun.
All right, I'll share with them a funny story. In Northern Virginia, I basically, when I started smoking weed, I told you I really liked
Yeah.
it. So I had a good connect. So I would buy some and I would sell some to some people. And I guess somebody got caught and I got raided in my home. Unfortunately, I was sitting on the toilet. So so you can imagine you're sitting there and then this door opens. It's like, sir, you need to come with me. And I'm like, oh, are you fucking kidding me? So, that was a bad experience. It kind of shook me because it was like, man, in my home, they came to my home for selling weed. But I was lucky I got those charges off. But it was pretty scary on the East Coast because what people don't understand is like I can drive here with 100 pounds
Yeah.
and I'm not scared. But in Virginia, if I drive with an eighth, I'm scared.
Really?
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. Like, yeah, it's really bad. Like over there, like, it's you're in an area where it's around the government, so and it was very strict rules about these things back then. They're better now. I think they got medical marijuana now.
Yeah, I believe they're medical in DC.
In
Only
DC. What about
And
Virginia?
and Virginia, I believe, will soon have some
Medical.
type of decriminalized
Yeah.
cannabis law. Yeah.
yeah, but this is in
Medical or full recreational.
2001 and 2002, right after September 11th, and so everybody was very vigilant. And so you're always scared to drive, like with
Yeah,
weed.
of course.
Yeah, with weed with you.
That's so crazy.
yeah.
How about you, Ali?
I think just the way I got into this was crazy. I mean, I have a lot of crazy stories, right, of what I've been through doing this. But what we were talking about before the show is like, the individual who convinced me that I could grow cannabis. I set up the garden, buy 30 clones, bring them home, whatever. I'm ready to go. Unbeknownst to me, this person was dabbling a little too much in psychedelics on a daily basis and kind of ended up having to go into care. And so I lost my first mentor. But I have a garden sitting there not knowing what to do with it, right? So we scramble around, my roommate and I, my former roommate, who's now one of our facility managers we talked about earlier. So, man, what are we going to do? We put money into this. We got to grow these plants. Like, this is super stressful. Find someone else to mentor us, to help us out. Unbeknownst to me, that person also has like a substance abuse thing going on and ends up having to go into care. And I'm like, again?
No.
I mean, it was just a crazy start, right? It was like, I was like shattered inside. Like, do I even continue doing this? Is this a sign from God that I'm not supposed to do this? So from the very beginning, it taught me, if you want to do cannabis, you got to be resilient. You got to be all in, because at one point the whole world was against us. And from everywhere, if you were getting robbed, you couldn't call the cops for help. Everything, your parents, your friends, everybody was concerned about you, like Amjad was saying. But we kept persevering. For all the folks who've been in this for a minute, and you've been doing this and you're still doing it, you deserve a lot of credit and a lot of praise, because you're bringing the plant of enlightenment to people. You're bringing a medicine to people. It's consumed non-violently. It's actually could be healthy for you. And finally, we're at a time when we're starting to get acceptance for it. So, it was a crazy start from the beginning. You got to be all in if you want to do cannabis.
It seems like you have one of those stories where you're just like meant to be a grower, like everyone just left and then you were just there to fiend for yourself and figure it out. And now you're growing like the best cannabis.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
I love
it. It's a pleasure. It's an honor.
That's awesome. And again,
How's the high?
the high, can you tell
Yeah.
I'm pretty high
I
right
can tell you're
now?
pretty high. Yeah,
I'm like, I'm losing track of time.
I know. It's a little. That's a low THC.
That high it's not too intense. It's like
That's
the
functional.
perfect kind of like 50-50 sativa high.
I
'Cause
call it a
it's-
mood enhancer.
That's why it's a
That's-
mood
yeah,
enhancer.
that's
But
what
I'm
I
here
like.
like, wait, how long have we been talking?
That's a mood enhancement.
Awesome. Okay, let's try this again. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to Terp Talk. And thank you, Amjad and Ali.
Oh, I love her.
Thank you guys for coming out from Source Cannabis. Don't forget to follow Source Cannabis as well as Terp Talk CA, respectmyregion.us, and of course, the Terp Queen. And we'll be talking Terps together soon. Awesome.
Bye.